This is the lecture for Access Module 1. We will first look at a completed database. In this case, it's called Skyline. Then I'll show you how to use a template, and then how to create a table from scratch with all the parts of it. So this is what I would consider a completed database. It already has the 4 objects that we'll be looking at. When you open it, you can see this navigation pane on the left. This shows you what the objects are. They're labeled. There are 4 objects that we'll be covering in Access: tables, queries, forms, and reports. Tables are where all the data goes. So Access is a database program. It keeps track of data, names and numbers, clients, inventory, whatever you need to keep track of. Every time you fill out a form online, it goes into a database, and all those little boxes that you fill out are called fields, and those all go into a database. Somebody's keeping your name and address for later. They're going to send you something, or they're going to spam you, or they're going to try to sell you something, or you're a patient or an employee, and they're keeping track of your data because it's important. To open an object, you just double click on it. The table is where all the information goes. It's the most important part. You do not have to have all 4 objects in a database. You could just have a table. Also, if you have this information already typed somewhere else, like maybe in Excel, you could also import it very easily right into Access. Looking at the parts of this table, we see it looks a little bit like Excel, I think, with columns and rows. Across the top of each column is a heading row. Those are called the fields. So in this database, we see it's called employees. You normally just name it, literally what is in it. So these are our employees. We have some kind of employee ID. F name and L name stands for first name or last name. You come up with your own field names. You could call it first or last. It's up to you, as long as it makes sense what whoever is typing into it, because it may not be you, as long as it makes sense to what they should be typing. Street address, city, state, zip, telephone, hire date, health insurance. This is what's called a yes, no box. And if it's checked, it means yes. And if it's not checked, it means no. So this person has health insurance. This person did not. Every table needs one unique field, a field that no 2 other people in this case, or possibly products in another case, has the same. At Montgomery College, the unique field would be that each student has, and even employees, we all have a different M number. Nobody's M number is the same. License plates on cars, no 2 are the same in each state. It's a unique field. You need to have one, and it's called your primary key. It normally is the first field in a table. So employee ID, notice that none of these are the same. Sometimes you'll see something like the M number with an M and then 7 or 8 digits. This is just simply a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All the other fields, there could be more than one person with the same first name, more than one person with the same last name. But one field needs to be unique. In this case, employee ID, and it's called a primary key. We're looking at the table here in what's called data sheet view. In all of the objects, there are 2 views. We will only go using tables and queries. We'll go into design view. For the design of a form and a report is a more advanced feature, and we won't be looking at it. But this is data sheet view. This is where you kind of type everything in. You can always change, edit in any way. If Fort Myers wasn't in Florida, it was in Maryland, you can just type right over it. It isn't, but anything can be changed or edited in any way. Let's take a peek at design view. We just click on the view button. I like to click right on the protractor here. If I click on the down arrow, then I have to click on design. It's just an extra step. If you click right on the protractor, it takes you right into design view. What we see here in design view is all of the field names, the data types, And the description is optional. I find it to be normally pretty obvious, so I usually don't fill it out. We're going to look at this in a minute when we will create our own table. But every single field, this is for the designer. This is the first thing you do when you create a database. This is for the designer of the database, and it is going to pick apart each field. You have to come up with the fields. You have to figure out what are you trying to keep track of, come up with all the field names, the different data types, which is what kind of information you're going to accept. Is it going to be a date? Is it going to be a checkbox? Is it going to be a drop-down box? And then each individual field also has a size, possibly a format, a default value. So again, we'll look at that a little bit more thoroughly in a few minutes. Just close it. You could see the little X there. And I closed the table. You could keep it open and then open the query, double click the query, and see how they just stack on top of each other. If I want to go back to the table, you'll get used to these little icons. You can tell what it is. This is a table, and this is a query. See how the icons are different? If I'm on the table, I just go to the right here, and there's a little close, and you can close it. You can have many open. There are certain features in Access. It gets a little bit picky. It doesn't like to have things open, so I do try to close things when I start doing, like performing a query or creating a relationship or something that we'll do later on. Sometimes it'll tell you to close the table, so try to be in the habit of closing them. This is what's called a query. A query is a second object in Access or in a database. You normally don't need every employee. Like, we don't need to look at every single employee for something that we're doing. If I'm maintaining the database, somebody called me up and said, I need a list of all the names and phone numbers of the people who have insurance. Well, if you remember, in my employee database, I have 12 different employees. And in my insurance, what this query has done, it has narrowed down from my table only those that have insurance. And again, you just name it Yes Insurance or Has Insurance. You really just literally give it a name as to what's inside of it. And sometimes you just run a query, and you might be on the phone with somebody and they ask you a question and you run it. How many people make over $50,000 in our company? It might be just 2 people, and you can just tell them on the phone. Or sometimes you're running queries every month, every week, and you can save them. So this query is a list of the people that do have insurance. This is, again, data sheet view. I'm going to go into design view by clicking on the protractor, and you'll see it's kind of like a mini table. This is a list of our table, and I can just widen this so you can see it. Here's how this was already created, and we'll walk through in Module 2 how to do this. But here's all our fields, and we don't need all of them. We've only selected 1, 2, 3, 4. And it says yes here, the criteria. Yes, for health insurance. If one said salary and we wanted to know who makes over 50,000, we could do greater than, or there's different wildcards. And again, we'll cover that in Module 2 in Access. And let me just, it's always going to ask you to save if you've made any changes I didn't want to save. A form and a report will be the last 2 items we do. I always use a wizard. It just walks you through step by step. Let's just look at a completed form. A form is directly related to the table. It is another way to insert the data into the table, but you only see one at a time normally. So you'll see these are the same exact fields that we saw in the table. You can use them. Maybe you have something like a private thing like social security number. If you're showing people and you don't want people to see maybe confidential information, you could remove one of the fields. It's nice to just see one at a time sometimes if you have employees or customers coming in and typing their own information in. And then that way they don't see the private information of the person in front of them, or the person after them doesn't see their information. So same exact, there's a few different styles, but same exact field names, and you can type in or change anything in any of these fields, and it goes directly into the table. Any change I make in the table will be also identified in the form. Just another way, and again, you don't even need one. You may never use it, If you're using databases a lot, just another way to kind of look at it, another way to enter one at a time. A report you usually do last. This is how you print an Access, something in Access. We normally don't need to print the entire table. Or, just kind of little pieces. I usually create reports from the queries. So I've narrowed down something. A report is just, and we're again not going to edit it. That's something that is in like a 15-week Access class that you do at the end. It can be kind of sophisticated. We'll be able to create one using a wizard. This one isn't perfect to show you. Here's another one. Yes Insurance might be better. Here's the Yes Insurance. This is a report that was made based on that Yes Insurance query. So I just consider it a report to be the nicer part of Access that you can print. You see how it automatically, and we'll do this in module 2, but it will automatically come up with that light blue and the banded rows, the white and the gray. And it's, nice to print if you need to bring it into a meeting or something. This is phone numbers. Maybe you want to put it on your desk, or somebody's asked you for information. It's just the nice way that you print it. So that is called a report, and that's the 4th object that we'll cover. Now, there is a way to create a template. I do not want you to use a template for your assignment. The templates are very kind of sophisticated. They come with way too much information, and you still have to edit the design. But for your future use, I want you to know that they're there. A template, just like in Word or Excel or even PowerPoint, is just under File and then New. And you probably remember that a template is a pre-formatted, well, database in this case. I just went into File, New. Maybe we'll just look at students. And it's preparing the template. Just give it a second. So this will be a completed template, not with the information of the students' names and phone numbers, but the design of the tables, the design of everything will be in there, even some formatting. This one's taken. I don't know why this one's taken forever to create. I think it just froze my computer. Oh, welcome to the student database. Here we go. It's very, very sophisticated. I really don't use, I just don't. I use templates all the time in Word and Excel and even PowerPoint, but I really don't. But I don't want you to not see them just because I don't like them. So here's look at all the tables, look at all the queries. These are already in here. Here's one called Guardian. So you have ID, be like a student ID, the company, last name, first name. So all the fields are in there to give you ideas. You can completely edit it. See, I just think they're a little bit too sophisticated. But it will be, they're already completed. Here's an attendance one. So, you could use this: student attendance date, status. This has a drop-down box, which I'll show you how to do. Next, we'll create our own table. See how this drop-down box, you can have choices. It's always good to give your user choices, or whoever's looking at your database when they're typing in the database data entry person, to eliminate errors or typos. If you only have a certain number of answers that you want, present, absent, excused, absent, unexcused, those are the only choices. Instead of risking somebody having a typo or something like that, you can create what's called a drop-down box. If it's what campus do you attend, all of you have been assigned a campus, regardless if you take classes at more than one campus. I could have campus, Germantown, Tacoma Park, Rockville. Or Rockville, Tacoma Park. I probably put it in alphabetical order. But this is a drop-down box. I'm sure you've seen them in forms that you filled out online. Just going to close that. Okay, now we're ready to complete our own table. And there's a lot of terminology here. So we're going to create our own database. I thought I'd create a database maybe for my employees. So I'm just going to go into File, New, Blank Database. So this is what you're going to do in the future for your homework. You're going to go into a blank database and you're going to name it. You'll see later that your assignment is you're going to create your own database based on something you have or something you like. Let's say I'm just creating it about employees, and let's say my company name. So the name of the actual database file itself should be the big, broad name. Maybe I'm Montgomery Furniture Company. So I could name it Montgomery Furniture. So you do name it. Access works from storage, not memory, like the other Microsoft programs. So it is always saving. It actually saves for you automatically after you've typed in a completed record or item about a person or product. And so you do need to name it first before you start. Unlike in Word, as you know, you can type a 5-page report and never save it yet. Like you can wait. In Access is a little bit different. You actually name it and save it first. So I'm just going to put it on my desktop. I'll call it Montgomery Furniture. So that's the name of the actual database, the big file itself. So it come into it. It starts me with a table now. That's the default. It changed a few years back. Access has changed very little in the last 20 years. It's just a powerful program and everything works. Very little, but something they did change a few years ago. When you do start a new one, a table automatically comes up. So I like to create my table. What we're going to do first is come up with our field names, and then you have to pick what's called a data type and change the properties. So you can do it here in Datasheet view, but you can't get into the properties. So I always like to design my tables or start them out in design view. I just think it's easier, it's less steps. So let's click on the view protractor there, and we're going to go into design view to create it. So we're the actual creator of this database. And on this table is going to keep track of my employees. So I'm going to name it employees. It comes up with a default field name for the primary key. Remember that key, the one field I said was unique, and it's normally the first one. So we do see the primary key. You can see physically there's a key there, and it's ID. I normally like to change it. I'm going to keep track of my employees in this table. So I'm just going to type right over it, and I'm going to do employee ID. You can have spaces in your field names. I choose not to. There's lots of different naming conventions. So if you ever do go through or you use a database at a job, you use the naming conventions that they want you to. I do tend not to put any spaces, and there's a way to show spaces by using a caption if you wanted to. Data type is the next field. So we have the field name and then the data type. So again, we're the designer. We may not be the person, the data entry person. We may not be typing it in. We just are designing it. Think about, what are we going to keep track of? We're going to keep track of our employees. And what do we want? What is our employee ID? Like, let's say it's a 5-digit number, like your M number is an M and then a bunch of digits. I think it's 7 or 8. Or maybe it's 2 digits, a dash, and 7 digits. Whatever it is, you're going to know. So the data type for each field is what kind of information pretty much is going to be put in. I wanted to keep track of so we have an employee ID, their first name, last name, their street, city, state, their zip code, and their phone, the department they work for. I thought we'd create a drop-down box for that. Their birth date, if they have medical insurance, and maybe their starting salary. So this is like information I would keep about my employee. Data types are, oops, I scrolled down there. Data types are, auto number will put a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's nice for primary keys if you don't have a number. We have an actual, let's just say 5-digit employee ID number. So I'm going to just put it with something called short text. It doesn't have to be text. It can be numbers. But short text basically is just typing in information like names, and it could be all your fields have short text. Long text is just for something longer. I absolutely never use it. Number is for if your field has a number that can be used in a calculation. So something like zip code is going to be short text. Something like number of credit hours or credit hours, you can use it in a calculation, even if we're not, and that would be a number. If you put hours worked, That would be a number, because a lot of times we multiply our hours worked times our salary. So numbers can be text, short text, if they're actual numbers. So think of them, the way I remember is, if I will never use it in a calculation, it'll be short text. So zip code, phone number, we are never multiplying our zip code by anything, so it's going to be short text. Large number's been added recently. I don't ever use it. A date or time, something like birth date, hire date. Currency is this field is money. So I've chosen to create a database with a bunch of fields that are using a lot of these to show you. Yes, no, that's the one. If the field truly is yes or no, do you have medical insurance? Are you getting financial aid? Were you hired before a certain date? Like if it's truly a yes or no field, that is going to give you the data type. Like it's going to be a square with a checkbox for yes or no. We're not going to do any of these. They get a little bit more advanced. Lookup wizard is the data type we're going to use to create a drop-down box. So employee ID will be short text. We're going to put in a 5-digit, I can't move this down, a 5-digit number. Let's just say our employee IDs have a 5-digit number. Next is going to be first name. I could just call it first. I could call it F name. I could call it first name. And first name is a short text. I can just hit the tab key. You can hit the down arrows, the right arrows. I usually don't put in a description unless the field is totally something you just don't know. That there could be somebody else typing the information into your database. So if employee ID isn't obvious, you can put literally a description. The only person seeing this is going to be somebody that goes into design. Put 5-digit employee number. If you literally describe what you should put in there. First, I think everybody knows it should be first name. So see how I don't have to put anything there. Last is going to be short text. We do want to break everything down into its smallest pieces, and except street, we're not going to separate the number and the street address, the street name, but things like first name, last name, zip code, city, state, all these little pieces are going to be broken down into their own fields. It's just for later when we sort or when we pull out using a query, that they have them broken down. So you can just pull out people that make over a certain amount of money, just pull out people whose employee ID is greater than a certain number, whose last name begins with an L, something like that. So street is common, and that I'll put like 123 Main Street. I keep the street address, the number, and the street, and even the apartment name I could put different, or I could have a different field. City, short text. State, short text. Zip code, I've seen it written zip code. Zip, postal code. It's going to see how that's a number, but it's going to be short text because it's not a number that I use in a calculation. Phone number, it's going to be short text. I can show you how to format that in a different way. So the apostrophes or the parentheses will come up automatically, but it's going to be short text. And then let's create a drop-down box. Department. Let's say we only have 5 different departments in our company. So it's got to, even if it was 25. We've all filled out a form online where if you're in the United States and it says you're putting in your address and it says state, and we see a drop-down list of all the states in alphabetical order. You can create one that big. So let's create one. We only have 5 departments. Maybe this could be major, and I could list all the majors, even though there's a lot. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into this table. The table is where it's at. The other stuff, the query, the form, the report, they take very little time. So just understand that. You get through this table and you'll be good. So we have the field name. I want to create a drop-down box. I go to data type, and it's called a lookup wizard. A wizard, I use a lot of wizards in Access, and I really haven't used any yet in other applications that we cover in this class. So it's a step-by-step box. It's dialog boxes that walk you through how to do something. So this says, this wizard creates a lookup field, which is a drop-down box. And I'm going to say I will type the values I want. You could, if it was a really long list, like all of the states or all of the countries in the world, you could put them in another table, type them all out and link to it, but we're just doing 5, so I will type in. So I do need to make that change, and I just hit next. And here's where I put my, what choices do you want to see? And you would want to put some thought into this and maybe written them out on a piece of paper like I did and put them in usually alphabetical order. I'm just putting the 5 different departments we have in our company: accounting, human resources, marketing, purchasing, and research. Of course, if I had more or less, you could have 2 items. You could do other. Sometimes we see other if you need, but do try to keep it. Drop-down boxes are really good if you don't want people, you have a lot of items or just a few items, you only want a few different choices. And I could just hit finish. I don't see actually that I've done anything. It will say short text, but you will see later, I promise, when we go back to data sheet view. Birth date. Birth date is another field, and this one I finally get to change it, and it's going to be date or time. I can just hit the tab here. Medical insurance. Yes or no. So again, that's a data type. Do not type in yes or no ever. There is a data type choice to give you a box. If you have something and truly the answer is yes or no, you're going to want it to use the yes no data type. And then starting salary. Just put that as my last field because I just want to show you, use as many data types as I can. Again, all of your data types might be short text. That is very common. There's currency. I like to write the field names. A lot of planning went into this. I just kind of started telling you what we were doing and typing them. But I've actually written them down, put a lot of thought into it. So here I have my field name and then the data type. I like to do that. I do all my field names, data types, and then I look at the properties. If you want to do your field name, your data type, and change the properties of each field at once, that's fine. You can do this in any order. Just a few things I do want to look at down here is the properties. You can go a little bit further. Like employee ID, we know it's going to be a 5-digit number. That's just what that's how we're assigning it. That's just what I've decided. So I can use field size to restrict, and I put a 5 there. And if somebody who's doing the data entry is just a little bit off track or off that day and they try to type in 6 numbers, they're going to get an error and they're not going to be able to. You really want to keep the integrity of this table of the information more than ever. Not in anything, you don't ever want typos, but more than ever, data is so important. You do not want someone to put your salary wrong or your hourly rate wrong, or certainly your employee ID, have it put in wrong. You could have a delay in getting your pay or a delay in getting benefits, or you really, really need to have accurate typing when you're typing it in. So let's just look at a few. So first name, I like to change all the field sizes. You don't have to put 10 or anything, even 50. I don't know anybody whose first name's more than 50. I might put 25. I don't really need to change a lot of these, just depending on the fields. I think I'll just change them just to show you. But one that I do want to show you is something like phone number. I'm not going to go over all of these, but there's this thing called an input mask, and I use it for phone number, sometimes for zip code, if you have a social security number, and it's a way that the number or the item is typed. We know that a phone number is usually typed with a left parenthesis, the area code, a right parenthesis, 3 digits, a dash, and 4 digits. Now, you could be paying somebody to type in this and you just want it to look nice, you want it to be fast. An input mask is a way to put this formatting on, so the person doing the data entry just has to type the digits. So under phone number, I'm going to go to input mask, and I'm going to click on these ellipses that come up here. It's saying, hey, you need to save. It'll always ask you, and I'll hit yes. It's a wizard, and I want the phone number. They already come up pre-formatted. You can also, it's a little bit advanced, but you can create your own. It's like the M number. If you wanted it to start with an M and then 7 digits, you can design that yourself if you were creating it on students or employees. at Montgomery College. So phone number is the first one. So I literally just pick it. What this is going to do is when I go back to datasheet view and start typing in the information, the parentheses is going to come up and the dash. So I just type 3 digits, 3 digits, 4 digits. I just type them out and they'll be nicely formatted. It's called an input mask and it is in properties. Only for phone number, for certain numbers. You might not have any. Department, I put a drop down so I don't want to do too much. I could also put an input mask for dates. And this way we know that a short date comes up. We want to be able to type the digits and then, any dates are like usually 1 or 2 numbers, like for the month, slash for the day, slash for the year. An input mask might be good on a date because you can just type out 0927-1969. The numbers and the slashes would come up. So I'll put an input mask on birth date. Medical insurance with just a yes, no. So I won't start that or change that in any way. Starting salary. So depending on your data type, your property choices will be different. I don't know if you notice that this changed here. I don't have field size anymore because it's currency now, not short text. And when I'm in yes or no, I have even fewer. So starting salary, I have currency. It's formatted as currency. If you wanted to make any changes, you could, but I'm just going to leave it. So I'm pretty comfortable with this. I think I'm done. Again, a lot of effort goes into that. So let's go now. This is called design view, and let's go type in the data. I'm going to click on the view button to get out, save it, and here it is. Here's all my field names. That's what I just put. I have all my field names and their data types and their sizes and different formatting. I do all that in design view. Let me just type in a made-up person here. I'll put my own information, and then now I'm the data entry person. I could be the same person, or you could hire this out. You might have a form that you have your customers or clients or employees fill out, and then on the form you have little fields and you can design it based on that and then just have somebody type it in. There's a lot more. See, I'm just typing the numbers. See how this was called the input mask. And then here, department, I'm hitting tab. I'm typing and hitting tab to move from field to field. And department, you see I had that drop-down box. That nice drop-down box that we made. Now we can see it. Remember, we couldn't see it in design view. Let's say I work in human resources. Medical insurance. Let's say I have medical insurance. See how I can put a check there by just clicking on it, or I can hit the space bar. And then starting salary, the formatting was under currency. The data type was currency, and I didn't change the formatting. So see, the default comes up with a $sign. You could change it to a euro or something if you were working in another country, or you change it to their currency. Let's say I just hit 25,000. When I hit tab, it automatically finished. I'm gonna go back up. So I just want you to see how it was formatted. I typed 25000 tab, and that got me out of it. When you're done with a record, one completed row about one person in this case is called a record. And you hit tab. Notice the asterisk here. That adds just some visual things in the table. The asterisk means that it's the next available record to start typing. When you're typing in it, usually you see a pencil here. That means you're editing it. I'm going to hit tab, and then what happened was Access automatically saved it. It saved the table. So because it works from memory, it saves automatically. It's kind of neat. I'm going to put the same number in just to show you. This is my primary key. And remember that it can't have two, see the pencil? It can't have two of the same. So I tried to put the same primary key. That one field needs to be unique. So it gives you an error. If there's a lot of little rules in Access. So if you're ever doing something wrong, or if you need to close, it just might want the table closed when you're trying to do something, it will give you an error message. and they're kind of wordy, but you just have to read them. The changes you requested to the table were not successful because they would create duplicate values in the index primary key. It's a little bit wordy, but basically duplicate value means the same one in the index or primary key. So I can just go back and change it. See oops. And then I can just, and it won't let you do anything else until you fix it. So I just gave it a different number. And then I can just keep typing. And I can type as many as I want. However many records that I have, I can just type them in. I do not have a relationship in this table. We will have a relationship in Access is what's known as a relational database. And I could, if this was my students, I could have it, you don't put all the information about one person in one table, you kind of break it down by category. So I could have students and major, or I could have orders and invoices and customers, and then you can relate them. You have different tables and you relate them by a unique field, which is normally the employee, or like the ID or the primary key. We'll be looking at that later. But make sure you read the notes and watch the little videos within the content module as well, and not just watch the lecture. You're still required to do that. So I hope this was a good introduction to Access and a thorough explanation of creating the table and looking how to do a template and just breaking